consistency compounds impact.
Yeah.
So being consistent in that example, and so when like I said, when I'm sick, I see my example, and as pastor, and I push through it. The other thing is, one more example is, I try to think, what would pastor do, or what would he want done?
Yeah.
And then there's so many things that I don't have to run to him and say, hey, we had a situation just the other day where we had, in our sound department, we had it was just like bang, bang, bang. There was people sick, and people couldn't do this, couldn't do that. You're one of those people, and you were scheduled to do 2 other things already. So I just did a group text, and I didn't even reach out to pastor. Yeah. I just did a group text and said, hey, we need some help. And so, and people stepped up, and it happened, and we ran into issues, but we made it happen.
We got it figured out.
Yeah. And so that's an example of just saying, you know what, because it was early Sunday morning when I got the news that we were in this predicament. Yeah. And so I was like, pastor's trying to get ready for service. Yeah. And so, I can tell him about it afterward, but this is what he would want done. It's like, we got to make it happen.
Yeah, and that consistency is so critical. And a little bit on your previous point, and you talk about those folks you can call on that are consistent all the time and consistently do things well. Mm-hmm. It's great. But those that don't, we never want to lower the standard down. We always want to try to bring them up to the standard and try to elevate them. And so, like you said, sometimes you will have to go behind them, but the best thing you can do is just continue to train them and to continue to push them. Say, hey, this is how we want to try to do things. Don't be like, oh, we're going to compromise and make things not as good.
I do have a hard time, not with the compromise part, but I do have a hard time with that, like delegating something like, I'll just do it myself. You know?
And Brother Gabe does things so well so often, so it is hard, when you have these certain things you're so good at, to let somebody else do it, knowing it's like, okay, they're not going to do it like I want, but also they're not going to do it as good. I'm not trying to be arrogant. It's just the truth.
Right.
Because I'm so experienced at this stuff, and so it is tough. But the consistency is key, and so it's conveying to that person because they're going to probably ask you like, what's the difference? How can I be better, or how can I get to where the standard actually is? And then you can convey to them it's about consistency. Yeah. Even if in the beginning you're not doing as well, or so we'll just take a Bible reading, for example. Pastor's pushing that this year about us all reading through the Bible in a year. Even if it's like the first day is like I only read one verse. Well, that doesn't mean the next day you just say, I might as well give up because I can't read the Bible in a year if I'm only reading one verse. We're just going to continue to be consistent every single day, and eventually becomes where you're getting more and more done, and then you develop good habits. I mean, I can't think of it off the top of my head about how long it takes to develop a habit, but it takes a while.
Yeah, there's a few different thoughts. It generally is about like 30 times, whether that's days or whatever it is. But I think, and the other thing is if you're not consistent, that question, like you talked about, is how can I get to the higher level, is never asked because you're not there. You haven't been consistent, so you're not modeling that example. The other thing is I think, so when you are consistent, and these words, I'm using these interchangeably, when you are excellent, consistently excellent in everything that you do, from the cleaning toilets.
You don't be consistently bad.
Right, yeah, which some people are, But it sets, for one thing, it gives you a reputation, and then it creates momentum. Right. You do these small things, and they compound over time. These things compound, and they snowball, and you become, excellent. There's in his book, Good to Great, Jim Collins talks about getting the right people on the bus. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if I can articulate the whole premise exactly, but he talks about I think he talked about getting, then you get the right people in the right seat, or whatever, and that's more like position. But first, you're just getting the right people on the bus. Mm-hmm. And I hopefully don't butcher the premise that he gave in that book, but what I think of is there are some people that and it goes back to this reputation thing and the excellence, that okay, if we get them on the bus,
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter if we're mopping floors. It doesn't matter if we're preaching. It doesn't matter if we're. They're going to be awesome. They're going to be great to have on the bus because they're going to give it their all. They're going to be excellent, and that's the kind of person I want to be.
And that's the thing about consistency in things is like you will eventually be asked to do things that maybe are not even normally in your scope, but because people know they can count on you, they're like, oh, maybe I'll just ask. So a good example is, well, now I'll be coming up on 5 years ago, got married, and I had this idea for our wedding to do a slideshow with a song for my wife, unbeknownst to her. And so who I went to was Brother Gabe.
I remember this.
I don't know. You might. I mean, I'm sure you've done that kind of stuff before, but not something that people probably go to you very often asking you to do. But I just like, who can I count on, one, to get it done? Because that's the big thing is I can't not have this done, and two, get it done quickly and have it done well. And I was like, here you go, Brother Gabe. Do you think you can handle that? And he's like, probably. And it turned out great. I mean,
I still have that video.
Yeah, I saw the video on my phone too. We just looked at it the other day. But that's what's going to happen. And so when you're doing things consistently with excellence, you should expect how you'll know that is because people start to ask you to do other kinds of stuff that aren't normally in your wheelhouse.
Like you said, behind your scope, yes.
The best thing you can just say every time is yes. And just, hey, I'll figure it out.
I'll figure it out. Especially if it's your pastor. If it's your pastor or your church leadership. And, you could be honest and say, I don't know how to do that, but I'll do it if you need me to. And that's kind of the story of my life in ministry is I'm always outside of my comfort zone. And that has, wherever I am at in ministry, that's how I've gotten there. Is from just being always stepping outside of the comfort zone.